Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ventures. This episode is a little different. In previous episodes, we have talked about all aspects of building a startup, of starting new ventures, for-profit, nonprofit, personal ventures of various kinds, how to grow a company, the dance between product and growth, how to build a team, how to court investors, how to think about Web3, blockchain, cybersecurity, and other topics that we've talked about on this show. But many of you know, or maybe some of you I haven't shared this with, but I got some time recently to meditate and think deeply about what do founders actually need? And sitting with that question and starting to reason from first principles, it led toward a number of paths that are not typically talked about in an entrepreneurial setting around emotional health, around who are you, finding your passion, but even thinking about what that passion is, how to discover that and live that out without being overly busy or masking the internal struggles that we all have with various activities or various substances or various unhealthy behaviors. Digging into all of that is something that I have the honor of having conversations with many of the founders that I work with to get to that level. And so when I was thinking about who is the best person I know to dive into these more meaningful conversations, my mother came to mind, and I gave her a call. Said, would you be willing to be a guest on the show? And she graciously agreed. So this conversation in many ways gets very personal. And so I'm inviting you in to learn a little bit about my life and my relationship with my mother and our parallels and our journeys that I think are very, very interesting. And so I'm inviting you in to listen to this, but also for the entrepreneurs listening in, there are a number of questions that we tackle about how to discover oneself, how to balance, how to steward. So for parents listening in, parenthood is one of the greatest ventures of all time. And so there is a ton of parenting advice, which I'm glad that we had a chance to talk about. But also just for those that are business professionals or growing companies, there are topics that we get into that I think are going to be helpful and insightful for you and your journey as well, or at least that's what I hope. So if you are watching, you can also listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can just search for Ventures. Or if you're listening, you can also watch by visiting wclittle.com, and there I'll put more links and information about the topics that we talk about today. All right, Mom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
I am so excited for this conversation. I remember growing up and you telling me, because I'd get into all sorts of adventures and things, I remember you telling me that I can do anything that I want, I just can't do everything. Because they think it probably had a tendency, which later in life, as an entrepreneur and investor and working on lots of different portfolio companies and ventures, I remember you telling me that because it was something that I needed to hear. And I think all entrepreneurs need to hear that. And so the entrepreneurs listening in, I'm excited to clue in where I learned at least the constant reminder, even if I didn't always do it, the constant reminder to slow down, as well as a variety of other conversations that I'm excited to have around peacefulness, around mindfulness, around how to communicate effectively with your team. And so, Mom, thank you so much for carving out some time, and I'm delighted to have you. So would you mind just starting and telling us a little bit about your journey, where you're from, for those that don't know you?
Okay. Again, thank you for this opportunity to have an in-depth conversation with you personally as well. We don't make time enough to do this personally. I mean, we do an okay job. So my name is Kathryn Little. I grew up in Bayonne, New Jersey. Yay, Jersey! I'm a Jersey girl. And that was back in 1948. So I'm going to bring you through just briefly, hitting some high points maybe. My sister Roberta and I, only two in our family, went to number 7 school, which was right across the street from us, except for the year we made our first Holy Communion and our confirmation. And my parents took us out of public school and sent us to St. Mary, Star of the Sea school for those 2 years. And we were just not wealthy by any means. We had enough, and we grew and progressed into high school. I went to Linden High School. Roberta actually went to Mother Seton High School, private parochial high school. I had a full scholarship actually to go to the Benedictine Academy in Bayonne, but when my dad looked at their curriculum, there was not enough science and math to satisfy him or me. So I went to the local high school instead. My dad was a chemist, and my mother also was in the workforce. She was an amazing executive secretary. She could spell any word, and playing Scrabble with her, you didn't have a chance. So she also had an absolutely beautiful voice. She loved to sing, and she gave me that gift. I love to sing. So I went to Douglas College, which was the women's college of the Rutgers University in New Jersey. I think it's co-ed now, but it was a women's college when I went, and gravitated into a chemistry major, being guided by my father's wisdom and what he saw might be my gifts. He thought I should probably go to medical school. And I think that was his wish for me. And it was a very possible thing. And so my grades were excellent. And I, started going in that direction. At the same time, I was blossoming in college in many different ways. I have always been a seeker. As a child, I had an altar, and prayer was very important to me. Always went to catechism. If we weren't in parochial school, we went to catechism. And there was something about the profound influence of early worship at St. Mary's, so beautiful. And so there was something there I couldn't quite understand, but I longed for, that never left me. And so all through this, there's this piece that was developing in me, a longing for a connection with the very center of whatever is, of myself, the connection with the divine mystery. So I was putting that up front early, because often I don't tell people about that. So I graduated. Actually, I did not graduate. What I did is I met my husband. I met my husband, Larry, at a dance at Princeton. And from the time we met, we never dated anyone else. It was a kind of a slow dance evolution of a realization that this was it. We wanted to spend our lives together. And so this was Vietnam time, and Larry was drafted into the Army. And the idea of not having any say in where he was going to go prompted him to enroll in officer candidate school. And so he was shipped off to, let's see here now, which one came first? Yes, that came first. Fort Belvoir in Virginia. And we decided we wanted to get married before anything else happened. So we made a date to get married after Easter in April of 1969. Mm. And push came to shove, officer candidate school did not work out. Mm. And he went on a journey that was a very difficult one. But as it turned out, the Army sent him out before our wedding date. And so we had to move it up. And we were married on a Tuesday in Holy Week, thanks to the auspices of a very dear priest in Clark, New Jersey. We were married at St. Agnes Church. So we just hand changed our invitations and sent them out due to military circumstances. It's going to be this date. And more people showed up than I think would have. Wow. So we ended up at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I transferred from Douglas to the Rolla School of Mines and Metallurgy. Had a very good chemistry department. Mm. And I did graduate in chemistry just as Larry was finishing his 2 years. He did not go to Vietnam. That's a whole nother story. Ended up as a pay specialist at Fort Leonard Wood. And so he was driving up and down Route 66 every day, and I was just walking to school a few blocks from where we lived in Rolla, Missouri. Spiritually, that was a very interesting time. Disconnected from my family. Larry was not a Roman Catholic, and I loved him. You know, we tried to make everything work. Mm-hmm. And 2 Mormon missionaries knocked on our door, and there was something about that really drew me. Mm. I have ideas about that. I'm grateful for the experiences we had with the Mormon people, loving people. I learned so much about family, about just very practical things that I needed to learn. So I think looking back, it was God's way for me to learn those things. Mm. And so we finished up Army. I finished up my degree, and we moved to Bellevue, Washington, and lived with Gaki and Grandpa, Larry's mom and dad, Mary and Robin Little, for a few months while Larry landed a good job. And I forgot. After law school, after the military, Larry went to law school in Baltimore. And there was another piece of our unfolding. George was born, for one thing. We had our first son. And very close ties with Mary and Jamie Cutting, Larry's sister Mary. And they lived in Washington, D.C., just down the road from us. And I did a lot of very practical, logistical work with the LDS Church. I was made the president of the the leader of Visiting Teaching Society. So I knew where everybody lived, and we figured out how to help each other. And it was a very lovely thing. I learned things there that I have kept with me and used for sure. Then after law school, we moved to Bellevue, Washington. And then Tony was born, Michael was born, and we moved to Bremerton. Larry took a job as counsel for the Naval Supply Center in Bremerton, Washington. And things unfolded from there. I was very involved in, I made choices. Now, this going back to this, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. One of the first choices that I made was I was not going to go to medical school. I was going to be a wife and mother. And I actually belong to the generation before mine. My parents were quite old when they had me. So, and Larry too. We both kind of belong to the generation before us. So, a lot of the cultural and societal norms were very much in me, and my decision was, no, I am not going to pursue something personally that I might like to do at this time. I want to be here for my family and my children. And I used all that I learned to do that. That was a big choice. You can do everything, but not anything. And today there are women who can do both. I could not, for many reasons. But so a family came along, and oh boy, what an experience. We had, each child was so individual. They came with gifts that I saw my role as a sort of like a farmer, providing the the ground of where they could grow and develop into who each of them were. So again, providing parenthood being a place where children who come through us, they don't belong to us, they come through us, can develop their gifts, and however we creatively can give them the proper nourishment for that in mind, body, and spirit. And so that is a rudimentary kind of overview. We now have only 4 children alive. Our eldest son died. That's a whole story in itself. And Larry is very much involved still in his private practice of mediation and arbitration. And I have just been, believe it or not, I still can't believe it, invited to take the role of mother guardian of a small religious community, the Little Sisters of St. Clair. We're contemplatives, and I love what I do. I love, again, it is like cultivating, again, creating a soil of growth, a grounding for people to grow into whatever God is doing, to let it blossom. And for your entrepreneurs, I'd like to say the trick is being. Let your work, your time spent come out of who you really are. That's your gift. And if you use that to seed whatever you're doing, it will blossom, and it will give you the sustenance that you need in the world. So many people do it backwards. It's like, oh, I got to have a job. And it's like, oh, I got to do this. And I force myself into this little thing. And it's like, turn it around. Be who you are. Let that blossom. Name it, honor it. It's different from anyone else's in the whole world. Give your gift. And be in community to do it. I love that Will has created this community for you. It's a very it's a sacred thing. So I'm going to stop right there. Have any questions?
I do. I have a million questions. Yeah. So after the move to Bremerton, I came along, and then the younger sister came along, and I was born in 80. She was born in 82, and I remember seemingly you having boundless energy, participating in all the things, in all the school activities, organizing everything, the neighborhood, the community, the people. I just remember a very vibrant, joyful home, which I appreciate immensely because most of my friends did not have that growing up, and I am that growing up in that environment was such an honor. I am immensely thankful for that. But for you personally, how did you do it? How did you do that? How did you have so much energy to pour into your husband, to pour into your children, and pour into the neighborhood, to the schools, to the greater community where we lived there? How did you do that?
By the grace of God, I was given enough wisdom to take care of myself, to get enough sleep most of the time, eat well, exercise, and most importantly to me, very often I woke up on a regular basis about an hour before everyone else did and said my morning time prayer, which would let me collect and be centered in my being. I'd write down a sketch of what I thought I heard might be what I had to do that day. And that could easily change. One of my mantras is I make a plan and God laughs. But somehow it all got folded in. And of course, I had the help of my mother, who lived not too far away. In her vibrant years, did most of my shopping, our food shopping and so forth. She was our super G. She knew where to get all the best values. She saved us thousands of dollars. So the energy comes from within, from focus, uh, from doing the next right thing. It unfolds. Of course, we had difficult times as well. It wasn't all easy going. But coming back to those basic things of taking care of myself so that my cup was full enough to be able to spill over into the lives of everyone else, that's really important. There was a time in my life that did not happen, and I got drained and I did get sick. So I've learned. And so I'm just grateful.
Yeah. I asked for a variety of reasons. The entrepreneurs listening in, it's mental health and burnout from doing a million different things at once is very common, very prevalent.
Oh, just one more thing.
Yeah.
Daddy and I, Larry and I, every quarter went away for at least like 3 days somewhere, Hawaii, somewhere, just to get away and be by ourselves. That was our time away. Very, very important. And we did that for many, many years. We tried to go once a quarter. Sometimes it had to be longer than that. But and then, date night on Friday night and so forth. And of course, so within the Mormon context, we had a structure that was recommended. Monday night was family home evening. We all had a dinner together. We tried to always eat dinner together, but family home evening was special. We had 5 children. So each week, one child was in charge. And after dinner, we would go on a magical mystery tour. The child and the driver would figure out where they wanted to go, out for ice cream to gosh, where else did we go? Tons of places. Yeah. The arcade. Let's see. Oh gosh. But anyway, it was fun. And so we did that. That was a touchstone place Um, and we had the calendar. Do you remember the calendar on the kitchen wall on the door? Huge. And we wrote down where everybody was going to be, so I knew I could keep track of where you all were. And also to remind myself that this, you need to get picked up, this get dropped off, this, whatever. So we had a plan. We even had a meal plan, hamburger on Monday, pork on Tuesday, fish on Friday. So a combination of my skills, my gifts that I learned all throughout all of my schooling and so forth. My medical skills with treating bumps and bruises and and all of that. It was looking back. I'd have to tell you, I miss it. I do miss it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, parenthood is now with the 3 children of my own, 15, 13, 10. Parenthood is one of the greatest ventures that there is. And I had a mentor said something very similar to what you said earlier, where he said that children are the greatest house guests you'll ever have. And where you said this children come through, I think the way that you steward that, the way that you pursued that venture of having 5 children and managing all the things and supporting the household, the CEO of the home, so to speak, was was an influence on me and my siblings that I think we are just later in life, we are just beginning to appreciate, understand, remember, and thank you. I mean, hearing the earlier part of your journey about there was a deliberate choice made,
Mm-hmm.
and that a combination of cultural times and choices for you individually led to the journey that you went on, and as you said, the sort of taking it day by day and trying to make the right choice and stay grounded.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember there was more. There were entrepreneurial pursuits that you had along the way, and even later in life, massage therapy practice.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
And but how did you, coming back to this theme of everything, but everything possible, but you can't do everything? How did you simultaneously just keep discovering who, per your own advice, how did you keep discovering who you were to live out of that and not do too many things? Because I remember you doing a lot of things. How did that balance or not balance? How did that go down?
Well, as I started to age, I started to grow in wisdom. And that came from deep prayer, from spiritual direction. Actually, I was in therapy for a while, and inner work. It comes from inner work to be able to be as authentic, as maybe transparent as possible in conversations with mentors. It takes a container of a vessel to allow that transformation to happen. It's an energetic vessel in the form of a group. For 15 years, I had these amazing 2 friends, and we met almost every week for an hour and a half or so at church. We had this little tiny church that was open to all kinds of things, and we sat right by the side of the altar in a threesome. We called ourselves the Trinity. And we listened deeply. There was nothing we could not say to each other, and we worked out lots of stuff. So in small group, with it, however that works. what else? Let's go here. So again, it's inner work that lays the is where it comes from. I believe that the holy mystery, the divine mystery, is within us as well as everywhere. But learn to listen,
Mm.
slow down, take time. I practice centering prayer, which is a time to just let everything just settle down and be.
Mm.
Not, as thoughts come up, oh yes, there's that, set it aside. And from that stillness, from that center, arises my God's, our meaning, purpose, joy, amazing joy,
Mm.
comfort. I mean, we just went through losing George, and I have to say, Larry and I are doing pretty well.
Mm.
That's in October, right? 6 months. It's where it's the source. It's where it is. It's and you can. I think we name it in all over the world in different ways, but it's the same thing. We are all part of this oneness. That our interconnections are amazing. If we could see how we're connected, I mean, if we had, we are totally one world, one people, one creation, and everything in it affects everything else.
Mm.
Like the spider web, if a spider dingles over here, it reverberates here. This is the same. We're all connected, and it's hard to hold that in your consciousness, but it's real. So
in the 80s, there was a big transition in our family that I bring it up because you alluded to the stage in the journey with the LDS Church, and I bring it up because as I get older and I get to a place where I'm talking with more people about their journeys, it seems like there is a in the interconnectedness. It seems like there is a common theme in the human journey around leaving a community and going out on one's own, or realizing that there's maybe something unhealthy about a community and transitioning out of it, or realizing that there's some idealism in place and coming out of that idealism. So in the 80s for you, I was probably, born in 1980. It was very young for me. So I have little glimpses of this season. But for you, what was that transition? How did you go through that? What did you learn?
I did a really major midlife change. You call it a midlife crisis. It has to do with outgrowing certain things. It has to do with unfolding of awareness and inner. Boy, I don't even know what word to use. It's an evolution of consciousness. It was as much as I learned and loved my 15 years with the LDS people. It's like God took me by the scruff of my neck and said, okay, not here, let's go here. So, I was called back to my roots and went into RCIA and the Catholic Church, the rites of Christian initiation for adults. So I could look at this whole thing from my older eyes. And so we left the Mormon Church. And at the same time, my mother, if you remember, Grandma Helen briefly lived with us, and that didn't work. And she was close by. My mother suffered from dementia and a number of other physical ailments and needed care. And we tried to take care of her in our house. That just didn't work. 5 kids are too much for her, and that's something I could not do. And that was part of my, you add on this, you add on this. And I added on being Larry's secretary. Do you remember that? In his private practice, my husband worked as an attorney for the Naval Supply Center, I said, and in order to help ends meet, he started a private practice, and we got a little office in Silverdale. And I said, "Oh, sure, I can do your paperwork." Well, that just was a little. That was a little much. That's part of my learning experience. Is you can do anything, but you can't do everything, or you'll get sick. Overloaded when your cup is not full enough to spill over naturally. What it takes away from your physical health, your mental health. You can't do it all. I could not do it all, and I learned. So let's see, what else can I say about that time? That's when George started having his problems, and we had to spend an enormous amount of time and energy in trying to help him blossom, be the best person he could be. And he surprised us. He was just not able to he was going to be who he was. And it was very far from what I would hope for him, because he didn't have what I saw as the joy and satisfaction of a life that I was watching the other kids grow up so beautifully, and George took a different path. And so that was very difficult. That's a whole nother story, though. But it is definitely a part of our family story and how we evolved and grew. I learned things from and about, from George, certainly, and about myself that were pretty profound. And it also gave me a much more compassionate heart. I could talk to people who had similar issues in their family and were hurting in different ways. And it's funny how that happens. Our own suffering opens our hearts. Or can. I mean, sometimes it can just close us down and make us bitter, but that was a blessing that did not happen to me and us. So, okay, I'm losing track here. Where do we want to go from here?
So, in terms of the parenting journey, especially as your kids get older, and you maybe see your kids making maybe some of the same mistakes or going down paths that you, in your wisdom, or at least your life experience, probably know the outcome of going down this particular path. And for me personally, I remember going through very idealistic 20s in my community, sort of a religious community I was in. And I remember interacting with you and you having simultaneous concerns and extreme amount of patience. So coming back to this theme of how did you do it? How do you simultaneously support someone if you know that they're going down a path that it will probably lead to unhealth, and simultaneously love them? Where does that? How do you do that?
Oh, wow, that's a big one. So first of all, the love was never an issue. There isn't anything any of you could have done or did, looking at picture George, that could lessen my love for you. The wisdom piece that comes in, having traveled with a child choosing a path that I didn't cause, I couldn't control, and I couldn't cure. The piece that I had to really um, be clear about is that each of you have grown into who you are in some way, shape, or form. And I saw so much potential in you, and it could go in so many different ways. There has to be a letting go. There has to be a allowing for natural consequences. Larry and I did the parenting group for the community and learned about natural consequences and logical consequences and all of that. And then as you grow into young adults and adults, we can be sounding boards. We can ask you, well, if you do that, what do you think will happen? But we cannot dictate. We cannot and so when I saw you and Sarah May, I was really excited to watch you grow spiritually, Will, through your work with the Presbyterian Church Sunday School and the Young Life. No, what is it called? Well, your friends who were quite fundamental. You went back to a place of safety, I would say. I think it's safety. And then getting involved with the community that you have, and we came and we listened, and I have to admit that the hair stood up on the back of my head when I heard your preacher. However, take a deep breath. And I remembered how in our own growing up, we had also been called to. I had also been called. I always led in this to a fundamental type of a structured religion that held me, and then God picked me up and said, "Okay, here's what's next." And I trusted. I had to trust. So the how you do it is prayer. However you. That's a very big word that means a lot of different things. So it's a holding capable with trust, with loving intention, very regularly, daily, twice a day, depending what's going on, or more, and then just listening and answering questions, and that's all a parent can do when we get older. When our kids are little, if they run out into the street and going to get hit by a car, you dash out there and grab them by the, pull them away. Can't do that when they're adults, and nor should we. Natural consequences, logical consequences, and lots of prayer. Lots of prayer.
Yeah, I mean, so for those who don't know my story, coming through an idealistic 20s and then leaving that, similar to what you went through in midlife, I went through that myself. And so coming into my 30s, it was, I think that the word that you used that I retreated to in my 20s was safety. And that's an interesting word. I think it's incredibly profound, because the next generation of people growing up, coming into their 20s, it's typically roughly around then, there is a new form of idealism. There's a new form of religion that is prevalent today that I haven't really thought about the word safety, but I think you're right. There is something safe about being in a regimented community with a strict set of ideals. And I'm seeing this happen in various social movements over the last 5-10 years. I'm seeing it happening in technological movements. There are no lack of parallels that people are making between the Web3 and Bitcoin communities and religious fervor. There are people that are grasping at wanting systems and rules and ways to spiritually progress in technology or Bitcoin. And I just think it's a common theme, this idealism that maybe lasts in the 20s or maybe into the 30s, and then people go through some kind of crisis. People go through a transition where they leave that idealism. They realize that like you've used multiple words, like evolving out or growing out or transitioning out.
Like the egg breaks, the shell breaks, and there you are, newborn.
Yeah. So a lot of the audience listening in, and I've in the last few guests actually have brought up some alarming statistics. Something like up to 50% of people in America don't have a friend, don't have somebody to call. 50% of marriages end in divorce. Most of my friends did not have a childhood that I had where I felt supported and had parents that drove me to soccer practice and baseball practice, and there was a parent pouring into me as to sort of allow. I look back on those years with just incredible thankfulness, but also sorrow that so many of my friends didn't get to experience that and had much more traumatic, abusive, difficult childhoods that are nearly impossible for them to talk about openly. So my question to you is, for those listening in who maybe didn't have a parent like you pouring into them and are discovering themselves maybe later in life, or there's actually a fair number of college students or early 20s who listen to this, what would you say to them? What are your thoughts to them as they are coming into navigating this chaotic world where maybe they didn't have a parent loving them growing up? What is your advice for them?
Find a community. Find a community to be to hold you with love. Find a community that is healthy. There's some out there that are not healthy. Where power over is not an issue. And that can be a church, it can be a club, it can be friend group. Where you feel heard. You can have fun. Spend time. It takes time to create this community. If you're not part of it, well, even if you're in a church, you find people that you know. It's just easier, I think. I am a very grateful member of the Episcopal Church at this point, which has a very open, diverse, welcoming ethos. So I was Roman Catholic, and my husband was a sort of not much Episcopal, sort of, and we have used that. Well, the Mormon Church was also a very, very good support group for us having our children. I learned how to be a mother of multiple children. Get it done. But right now we are in the Episcopal Church, and virtually it's been quite amazing. My own particular spiritual group, because of who I am, and I've discovered my gift for contemplative prayer. I'm a contemplative. First of all, I'm an introvert, and so INFP, if anybody understands what that. And so I have helped gather over many years. I was professed in 2009, and this community of mine, we meet virtually twice a day, 8 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the morning, for a type of contemplative prayer. We encourage each other in our own rhythm of life. That's an important one. We have a community rule as well that has certain pieces. So there is this structure. and it's very loving. And that's what works for me. Uh, find something that really works for you. Uh, it's it's about inner work. It's about what comes from within, and it's so easy to quiet that voice with alcohol, drugs, busyness. Just stay so busy you can't hear yourself think.
Mhm.
But then you fall asleep exhausted, going. It has to do with making meaning in your life. Um,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm I'm picking up on a meta theme, both in your journey and my journey, and I know in many others' journeys, with regard to having a season in fundamentalism, whether
Mhm.
it's religious or some other technological or philosophical idealism. But it's a season of fundamentalism that where you just learn a lot of practical things. You learned a lot of practical things about how to be a mother of many children. I remember learning a lot of very practical things about how to be a husband and a father and a worker and develop a work ethic and just sort of a system of rules and procedures that I think you're right. That's the right word, safety. There's safety in learning those things and getting the practical life skills from that kind of ideological fundamentalist type of approach. But then there's a process of leaving that. There's a process of taking the good from that and venturing out into a more mystical, um, sometimes lonely
Mhm, mhm.
journey.
Absolutely. It's like breaking open.
Mm,
It's the container that we it's a healthy container for us at the time. I'm not saying any of it was not good, but I outgrew it. I hate to say that because it seems like I'm putting down what I went through, but it's not.
mm,
It's part of the journey.
mm,
But when the container breaks, then you grow. You It's like the lotus that unfolds. You know, it's so that's the core of everything. It's the place to begin and to go back to in everything I do. So, we've got everything going here now. We have um, things in the community. We're involved with the homeless people in Olympia. We are um, I help my daughter who lives 2 blocks away. We just moved here 2 years ago, 2 blocks from Elizabeth, and her children are part of we're their annex. They call our home their annex. So we folded that in, and whatever it is that is presented for us to do, we can do if we have that center. And so I would wish that for your consideration to listen to her. What's that about? Uh,
mm,
mhm,
mm. So then, coming back to a topic that advice that you gave earlier in terms of finding who you are, discovering who you are. I I don't think it's a stretch to guess that most people don't know how to do that, and there is a busyness in everybody's lives that are, yeah, sometimes with drugs and alcohol and other things that are used to detract from that inner voice, from that inner part of us that are trying to tell us who we are.
exactly.
And so for those who maybe have just maybe this is the beginning of that, listening to whatever that is,
Mhm.
how how would you guide them to slow down and listen, or what are they even listening for? In other words, how can people discover themselves? I know that's a huge question, but
It is
if
a
there's one
very good.
person in the world I would ask that question of, it would be you.
So the word that comes to mind is discernment.
Mm,
This is a discernment process. The works of Parker Palmer. Uh, he is a Quaker, very well known author and leader. He has written some books. Just Google Parker Palmer, the title that you see that speaks to you, get that book. It has to do with becoming who you are. And discernment groups, one of the blessings that I found in the Episcopal Church is that there is a way to gather intentionally, choose people, like 6 people, to sit with you about a question in your life, some big change that's coming on, but whatever. And be held in it. It's not just random. It has to do, there is a really lovely process to unfold those questions. For us in the Little Sisters community, when a postulant is finished with her 3 months of questioning, we have a discernment group for her. She chooses 3 sisters to listen to her, and we will listen for signs of the Spirit to affirm or deny. I know it comes up it's very clear. It's like the yes that comes, or the this isn't right. Let's do this later, or whatever. It's authentic. It's transparent. It's loving, affirming, and so discernment takes more than yourself to do. You need to have the feedback, the mirroring. Be our mirrors for each other, and to find it in a way that is not threatening. It's loving. That is a key. So I welcome anyone who is at the point where they are I call it the Lyman. It's the place you're out of something, but you're not quite anywhere else. You're in that in between place, betwixt and between, to gather community around you and have people listen. Go out and find them. They're there. Yeah.
That's
if
good.
you ask, but ask.
So last question for now. What are the questions or problems or projects that you're thinking about now and in your the next season for you? What are those things that you're contemplating and meditating on in the next stage of your own journey?
Well, there are different levels. In the physical world, mind, body, and spirit are one. I love this little house that we have purchased. It was built in, I think, 1950 or 1940. And great bones and so forth, but we're making it more ours. Lovely. We're getting bids now on a deck out back. We just cleaned out. I'll show you later, sweetheart. We took out all of the brush and so forth in the back of the backyard, and it made it double. We doubled the property back there. It's amazing. Wow. And so we want to eat outside and that. So there's physically a kind of a slow one task at a time that we're focusing on getting done. So the spring clean out has been done. Check, we got that done. Oh, nice. And we're going to paint the house. So there's that level. Then I have 3 years of work as mother guardian for my community, and we are growing our community. The next step is working on the website, and I may ask you a little help there. We have a good website, but it is not very welcoming, and I think that since it is definitely our front door in this day and age, we're going to work on that. We have a guardian council meeting coming up just on that, and so we're working on that. We're growing, as I said. We were only in the Puget Sound area up until a year and a half ago. Now we have a sister on the East Coast in Maryland, a novice in Texas, a novice in Colorado. I mean, we're growing, and we have a brand new person who's coming in as a postulant from Seattle. So I love the fact that we're growing and giving people an opportunity to find that support and to share that support, because there are a lot of people out there who it's really hard to be a contemplative and be in the world.
Mm.
So, we don't live in monasteries. We're a dispersed community. And so that's where my energy is. I hope to be able to continue in that for as long as I can. Let's see, what else? Looking forward to it, gathering the family in July. Your dad is going to turn 75 years old, and we're gathering people down in Long Beach for a big to-do. And we're also going to spread some of George's ashes there. We had so much fun together over many years playing together. So that is happening week around the 9th of July. I'm looking forward to that. And to continue this connection that we have with our family in however it's going to unfold. So God willing that our health and our abilities can continue.
That's good. So if people are interested in reaching out to you, who might be listening in, is there a place to find you online, or how would you prefer people contact you, or not, or maybe through me, or if people are interested in getting hold of you, how can they do that?
I think that the best way would be by email, and that way we could make a connection, make a date to talk to each other, maybe on the phone or not, or however is comfortable for you. But I'm very good with talking one-on-one on the phone, or even Zoom. Then we're face to face. It's a good thing.
Are you comfortable with me sharing your email in the notes?
Yes. Do the kathylynnelittle one. I have others, but that's my personal one. kathylynnelittle@gmail.com. Lynn with an E, thanks to my mother.
Well, Mom, this has been great. Thank you for sharing a very small introduction piece of different threads in your journey, and I'm very thankful.
I am also very grateful, dear. Thank you for the opportunity. It's bringing tears. And I hope that in June, around Father's Day, you might ask your dad to do the same thing.
I think that is definitely in the cards.
Love you. Peace be with you.
Peace be with you. Farewell.
Bye.
All right, a couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at Proto Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you and your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, it would be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.